Shalom, welcome to Hebrew Literacy. Today we will be continuing our walk through the book of Exodus. This is our directed Hebrew immersion with a focus on visual learning style. So let's see, if you want to follow along, you can either watch the screen where I will be writing quite a bit. You don't have to, you can just listen if you prefer. But if you want to follow along that way, we will be in Exodus chapter 28, starting with verse 24. All right, let's get to it. ונתת את שתי עבותות הזהב על שתי הטבעות אל קצות החושן. Okay, so ונתת, this is of course from Natan. And that final noon has assimilated into the tav. So in ancient times, this would have been natanta. See, the noon would have been right here. But it assimilates and we get natata. And the ta at the end, of course, reminds us, this is an older spelling, it reminds us of the word ata. Okay. So you have the word ata, and then the last part, the ta, when you see that, at the end of the verb, that's what's going on. Oftentimes, even the hey is gone. That's the more usual spelling, right? But here we have a more complete ata, meaning you. So natan or natat is gave or set. Ta is ata, you. Specifically speaking, it's what we call third masculine singular. Or pardon me, third, second, you. Второе лицо. Okay. So natanta, natata would be a perfect form, meaning you gave or you set. And then we have our wonderful vav conversive, or some more modern grammars call it the vav reversive, which is going to change the aspect, making the whole thing into an imperfect aspect. So venatanta, venatata, or venatato means and, to, you shall natan, give or set or place. So, and you shall place, or then you shall place, then you shall set, et, the definite direct object marker, we don't translate, shitei avotot hazahav. Nice construct chain here. And remember, whenever we have a construct chain, we try to put the word in our translation of in between each of those words. Unless it sounds funny, then you can drop it. Right? The chain is doing that for us. It's giving us the of between all the words. And when the last word is definite, we're going to put the in front of all the words. And this last word is definite because it has the definite article on it. The word for the is the prefix ha. Now, that's not always definite. I mean, the hey prefix, sometimes we have what's called a hey interrogative. It's pointed a little bit differently, usually, which makes things a question mark. But this is the word the, ha. So because of that the there, I think I like it better without the dots. It's going to impart its the-ness to every word in the chain. Actually, it might be clear if I do it in front of the word. Here we go. So literally, it's saying shite. So the is going to come over here. So take the, impart it to the first word, the shite, from the word shitayim, which means two. Drop the mem. The two of the avotot. These are chords. Chords. So the two of the chords of the zahav, of gold. So the two chords of gold would probably be the right way to translate that here. Any comments or questions? Welcome. We really like to have you guys with us. If you are live in the premiere, I used to always do these actual live, right? Just live. But we started having a lot of technical problems when it was live that don't occur when I pre-record. And one of the problems, which is not the least, was YouTube no longer allows me to stream live in ultra high definition quality. That's 4K quality. It doesn't even let me do it in 2K. It always complains about the resolution, and I couldn't resolve that. So I can only stream it 1080p now. And I like to have that extra quality for those of you that have high resolution devices, TVs, something like that. So that's just one of the issues. Maybe you weren't aware of that one. So this is why a lot of our stuff is going out in a premiere. So I pre-record, but then I'm there with you guys in the live chat that happens when the premiere is on. But our 2 hour long Drosh on Shabbat, that one is still live, and so that's stuck at 1080p, unfortunately. But so anyway, so it's nice to have you here. Usually we stream at this time of year. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 9 p.m. over here in Asia at GMT +8. The Philippines time, or so-called China Standard Time, is one of those names for this time zone. That changes when the West has their daylight savings. We change it by about 30 minutes, right? So it will move to 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard. That's New York time, and it will be 8:30 over here in Asia. Yep. So right now we're at 9. So depending on when you watch this video, it just depends on what time of year we are at, right? So we try to keep it in those two times to minimize the difficulty for people across the world that are coming in. I'm very appreciative of you guys. Looks like this week we're going to hit 5,000 subscribers. So thank you to all of you for getting the word out. Much appreciated. And yeah, okay, so let's get back to it. So the two chords of gold. Upon or by or with shite hatabaot. Shite hatabaot. And yes, I realize in modern Hebrew dialect we just say shtei, but we are going to try to keep things biblical here. Sometimes I get people who are angry with my theology, and they'll kind of mask that through anger about what the Hebrew means. Right? Like, it's pretty obvious when it happens, and they'll be like, oh, nobody says it this way in Israel or whatever, blah blah blah. I'm just like, well, it's a different dialect. It's a different dialect. We have many dialects of Hebrew. The primary dialects are, of course, Biblical Hebrew, which in and of itself has traces of various dialects. It's written over a period of 1,000 years, the Hebrew Bible. And so there's a whole study in diachronism about how to identify when a certain passage was written based on the vocabulary and the syntax and other things like that. So just biblical Hebrew in and of itself, there's a lot of stuff going on between Northern dialect and the Juhadite dialect. And, I mean, you can even see traces of this culturally in the Bible between various tribes. Say Shibboleth! And they can't say it, Sibboleth, which is interesting because we even find that a Hebrew sheen often becomes either a thal or a seen when it goes into Aramaic, right? Also into Arabic that way. So very, very interesting. So like you have talithin, right, for 30, whereas in Hebrew, sheloshim, right? Sheloshim becomes talithin, right? So you can even see this starting with the Ephraimite dialect. And so that's just what's considered one dialect, but really it's not. That there's a whole macrocosm that contains the various dialects and changes and vocabulary usages that happen in the Bible, part of what makes it so rich. And then we have what's called kind of an umbrella term, PBH, that's post biblical Hebrew, which includes some right after biblical Hebrew, and sometimes Mishnaic Hebrew or so-called rabbinical Hebrew is put under that umbrella, which really only was the vernacular from about 165 before the Common Era until second century of the Common Era. So about maybe 300 years as a spoken language, which is actually pretty cool that we know this because there are a lot of Aramaic primicists who insist that in the first century that Yeshua and all of his disciples were speaking Aramaic and not speaking Hebrew. That there's some people that for a long time thought that much Hebrew wasn't spoken even in Israel. But we see that Mishnaic Hebrew was a living language in that time frame. So absolutely Hebrew was one of the languages that was alive and well in ancient Israel in the time in which the apostolic writings were written. And then after Mishnaic, rabbinical Hebrew, we get into some later forms of Hebrew, kind of a literary style. Some call this liturgical Hebrew. And you have, again, many nuances. And then there's another, like a medieval Hebrew that's in there. Medieval Hebrew, it's 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 pretty similar to Mishnaic, except it's heavily influenced by Arabic and Arabic vocabulary from a lot of Jews who were living in that region of the world, right? And then finally we get modern Hebrew in about the 1800s, right? So modern Hebrew is very far removed from biblical Hebrew. The one thing that's cool about modern Hebrew is this attempt to artificially bring the language back to life. By artificial, I mean it wasn't organic. It was people taking actions to revive the language, which is fine. A lot of the things they did go back to the older flavors of Hebrew. So they weren't just like picking up from medieval Hebrew, for example, or liturgical Hebrew or something, but they went back. They took a lot from biblical Hebrew. They took some from Mishnaic Hebrew. And so it's really pretty cool. It's not exactly like what you would expect from the latest form of the language. So anyway, so if you're a fellow Israeli and to my brothers, if you're going to criticize some of our pronunciation stuff, please keep in mind this is not a modern Hebrew class, and a lot of the pronunciation things we do here are for the benefit of understanding, so that my students, including you, I know a lot of Sabras don't understand biblical Hebrew. You are welcome here as well. So the purpose is to embed things in people's minds with out a great amount of homework in addition to the classes. Okay, so there's kind of a method to our madness here. So maybe hold back, but really, I find that the people that are leaving, it doesn't happen that often, but when I get one of those angry comments, I usually have this feeling it's a theological issue, right? Like, I've had people, you don't really know Torah Hebrew or not. And look, just this is not ego. This is not anything like this. I put in the work, like you guys are putting in the work. Okay, it wasn't overnight that I obtained fluency in Torah Hebrew. It takes work, but it's a wonderful work, and I want to encourage all of you. And it is doable, and it is one of those things that you can accomplish and get to where you're just reading the Torah and understanding what you're reading without having to think about it, even in your native language. So be encouraged, and yeah. And if you do want to do modern Hebrew, that's great. There's lots of resources out there. You can do that. And for me, my emphasis for people is to understand the Bible, because so much of the heresies and the theological misunderstandings come from people just not caring about the holy language, the holy tongue, the language of revelation. All right, let's continue. So here we have a construct chain. Shite, just like up here, shite coming, and of course Israelis today would just say shte, right? They make a lot of the schwas silent. Shite from shetayim, again they say shtayim, we say shtayim. So shite, two of, right? The mem is gone. Two of ha tabaot. So tabaot means rings. Ha tabaot means the rings. So glad you guys are here. We pretty consistently have over 20 in the live premiere, which is pretty cool. Sorry, I pressed a button and it delayed me. Okay. And I know some of what we teach might be repetitious for some of you at a more advanced level. I understand. That's fine. You can turn up the speed, right? You can adjust the speed if you don't want to go through the definite article again or something like this. I'm trying to help as many people as possible to get to the point to where they realize this is a possible goal. It is a possible goal. All right. Interesting. My Zoom went away again. Seems like a bug in the device I'm using where sometimes it just disappears. So, al shitei hataba'ot, upon or near the two of the rings. El, el, unto, ketzot hachoshen. Ketzot hachoshen. You know, I also have some critics who would say, why don't you just do it in Ashkenaz? Be authentic, do it in Ashkenazi Hebrew. Well, there's a point where Kalal Yisrael, this is something my bar mitzvah rabbi used to push a lot, is the concept of Kalal Yisrael. This is kind of standing with Israel as a whole, right? And so there's a point where it's better not to deviate too much from the way that people say things today, right? I mean, we could have said Ketzoth Hahoshen, right? Kind of make it more ancient pronunciation-y and stuff like that. That's something I think people can do on their own. If you're very interested in trying to resurrect one of the ancient pronunciations, then go for it. Here, the focus really is to get you to understand what you're reading, what you're praying, what's happening. That's really what I want for you guys. I want to share that joy with you that I've been so fortunate to have in my own life. It's something people cannot take away from you. When things are going bad in life and you've put in some time to really understand the holy language, and you have that joy of reading the Psalms or reading the Torah portion with understanding, and then bad things happen in life, that's one of the things that you can just say, you know what? I understand the Bible, the way the prophet spoke it. You'll be able to say that to yourself. And that's something that nobody can take away from you. So the ketzot is extremities or ends of, remember it's construct, so we have of in the middle there. Ha choshen. So the extremities, we take that the and we bring it over here. The extremities of the choshen, the breastplate, meaning, of course, the breastplate of righteousness. Let me just make all the notes consistent here. Okay. Any comments or questions? There, that looks like about the right size, kind of maximizing space. I'm going to do a time check, but I think I'll let it keep recording so I can see. Okay. You got about 5 seconds left for you note takers. All right, let's go to the next slide. Next verse, rather. Verse 25. Verse 25. Ah, it's too bad my knob for zooming isn't working anymore on my device. All right. It was working when I started teaching today, but then it died. Okay. Ve'et shitei ketzot shitei ha'avotot titen al shitei hamishbetzot v'natata al kitfot ha'ephod el mul panai. Okay. So the 8, here we just have the definite direct object marker doing his thing, preceded with a normal conjunction, that's valve. Conjunction, junction, what's your function? Stringing phrases together and combining all the meanings. I don't remember if that's how it goes, but remember Schoolhouse Rock? My sister Julie, shout out to Julie if you're watching, my older sister, the Bechora, sent to me a nice video about the Independence Day and stuff, and it was from Schoolhouse Rock. Like something like "We don't need no kings anymore." It was so cute to watch back when the country actually taught patriotism in the schools. I generally think patriotism is good for society. It's kind of like an extended family, right? Like loving your family. All right, so and 8, the DDO. Definite direct object marker. And now we have a big construct chain. Very cool. All right, let's zoom in and take a look here at that. Shite, again from Shetayim, 2, of Ketzot, extremities or edges of Shite. So again, from Shetayim, 2 of Ha, the Avotot, the chords. And you'll notice here the ayin could not take a dagesh. So the dagesh came down over here and lengthened that patach into a comments, right? For those of you who care about this kind of thing. So the usual pointing for the definite article, because in ancient times it was a hal. So what happened is that letter lamed from the hal would assimilate into the first letter of the word, right? So there's some word XXX, and then the hey just comes down, and the lamed would assimilate. That means it would cause the next letter to double. That's why you see a strong dagesh in that letter. But we have a problem. Okay, and usually the usual vowel that we have underneath is, because it was the word hal, the patach stays there. So we still have the ha. But what happens in the case when the first letter is a guttural, like an ayin, or an aleph, or a hey, or a chet, and also the letter resh, which is not a guttural. He's kind of a guttural wannabe. Is we have to do what's called compensatory lengthening. We have to change something. So since ayin cannot take a dagesh because it's a guttural, the way that we compensate when the word starts with an ayin, well, usually there are exceptions to this rule, but the most common pattern is that you can think of that dagesh as traveling around. He's going to lengthen the short vowel patach. Patach is just that horizontal bar. Oh man, I forgot to draw it. Sorry. Trying to make this smooth for you guys. He's going to be rejected, spat out of the ayin, comes over here, and then he lengthens the short vowel patach to the long vowel comets. And that is exactly what we see happening over here. In case you need a reminder why that's there. Okay. So because it's definite, it's it's the, is definite. That definiteness, again, we're going to try to put on the whole chain. And being a construct chain, expect, or at least try, to translate with of in between each of those words to see if that works out in English or whatever your language, target languages you're translating into. Okay? Those amber lines are just kind of showing us where the word the is going to try to land if it works in our language, okay? So we have ve'et, and also, or and, the two of, the ketzot, extremities of, the two of the chords. Now, obviously, we could have deleted that last the. The two extremities of the two chords is probably the best sounding in English. T-tain. This initial tav here, this is another example reminding us of the word ata. Good enough. Okay. So that is what's happening here. When you see tav, prefixed to the beginning of a word, that reminds you usually of ata. Unfortunately, it can also be a feminine third person singular she, so context will tell, but just try you first. That's much more common statistically. You, second masculine, singular. So T, and then there's a dagesh in the tav here. Why is that dagesh there? Well, the verb is natan. Natan. This is what we call a pay noon verb. A pay noon verb is when the very first letter is a noon in your verb, right? Natan, to set, to place, to give. And very often that noon will either disappear or will assimilate. The same thing that happened with the hall over here, the lamed, he assimilated, right? He'll go into, well, he tries to go into the first letter of the word, like here we see. You see there's a dagesh there. That's because the lamed from the hall went in there. So the same thing happens here with this noon. And it indeed has gone inside of the first letter. Well, the next letter, rather. So in ancient Hebrew, really what we're looking at here, this word would have been teen, tain, teen. There's a noon there, teen, tain, from Natan. We put the tav on the front from a ta, right? So we put the tav here. We had teen, tain. And then over time, that noon, it just was easier to double the next letter. So this would have been tit, tain. There's two tavs here, tit, tain. So the noon has assimilated into there. That's what has happened. Okay. Let me zoom in there again for you guys with notes. Wish my knob hadn't stopped working for the zoom. Okay. Teen tain, you all shall set, you shall place, you shall give. Al. With shitei hamishbetzot. Okay, so upon or near the shitei hamishbetzot. Let's have a look here. We have another construct chain. I know sometimes we put a lot of time into breaking down the morphology, what's happening, but this is because you really need to get good at this. This will make learning the language much easier. Because part of the problem is not just learning vocabulary, but recognizing what you've learned. So ha is the, I'm not going to write it all out again. We saw that over here, right? It's definite. So its definiteness is going to come over here. Teen, tain became teen. So you shall place or set with or near shite from shtayim, or pardon me, from shtayim. Did the modern pronunciation there. From shtayim, from the two of ha mishpatzot, of the seams, the connection points. So to the two seams. Venatan became venatata. Same thing happening here, only over here we have an imperfect form of the verb. Teen, tain. Maybe I'll draw that on there. Let's show the theoretical tav over here. Oops, I reached the edge of my tablet. There's the vowels, and then we would have had we would have had a weak dagesh there because of the silent schwa. Teen, tain became teet, tain. That's an imperfect form of the verb. Now we have a perfect form of the verb over here, doing a similar thing. In this case, it would have been, it's the last noon, because the verb natan also has a noon at the end. So that guy is going to assimilate here. So this would have been a theoretical natan to, natan to. So the noon, I'm just going to draw it as a final noon because it is the final noon on the verb, would have been in ancient times here, natanta. And then he assimilated and caused the doubling of this tav. That's why there's a strong dagesh there. It's two tavs. Natanto, natato. And again, the to at the end is the longer form, like you saw on the previous slide. Looky here. Remember we had this nice, beautiful example of you on this slide? ta at the end, the older spelling. Natanta became natata. That's and you shall give, right? Natata is you gave or set, you set, pardon me. And then ve, or like replaced, ve changes it. Same thing happening over here, exactly same thing. So we have the vav conversive right here, changing that whole guy. I regret that I used the lime color for both of these now. Maybe let me fix this. Let's see. Which shall I use instead? What the heck? Let's use pink. I usually use the magenta for emphasis, but let's just use it here so we don't have some confusion. Okay. Now we can use lime for the vav conversive, which is changing this from a perfect verb, i.e. a completed action, to an imperfect verb, an incompleted action, which usually maps to present or future for English, if we're doing tenses in English. So, venatanto, venatato, and you shall give, the ta here's the you, right? Ta from ata, reminds you of ata. See the previous slide if you need that example again. Actually, I'll show it again. See? Right here, this beautiful thing here, right? Ata, so natanta, the ta reminds you of that it was ata. Same thing here, the ta reminding us that it's ata. Then atato, and you shall place or set with or upon construct chain. Hitfot ha ephod. I clicked aqua. I don't know why it gave me lime. Another construct chain that is definite because the last word has the definite article. And look what happened here. Look, we have a lengthened vowel down here. Why? Because the aleph cannot accept a dagesh. So we have the same pattern as what we had here happening here. You can think of the dagesh as being rejected. So the aleph, it came on down over here, lengthen that guy, boom. Okay. So kitfot is like the shoulder and upper back portion of the ephod. So the Venus comes over here. We got to get all of it in there. The definiteness. So upon kitfot ha ephod. So the ha, the shoulders and upper back portion of the ephod, of the ephod. El unto mul panaiv, mul panaiv. A final construct chain. And again, it's definite because this time, not because of a ha, but because of the suffix I've, his, or literally of him. So pene, presence of or front of him or it. I'll just write it here. But could be, you could think of it as him because it's referring back to the ephod, which is masculine. Unto the front or unto before its front. Okay, let me see how we are on time. I think that's a good stopping point. Yeah, great. Okay, if you guys have any comments or questions, please be sure to let me know. And a special thanks to all of our patrons. I really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing from you. If you watched the video not when we were doing it live, then give us some comments down below. And please make sure to smash that like button. Shalom, shalom.